See, I know they're going through that, but they're just, they're the only game in
I don't
town.
I don't know a lot
Mm.
about it, so don't ask me that question. Yeah.
No, I know. No, we're sticking to stuff that you've given us. I was just more curious if
I don't know. I don't know where they're at. I've followed lately.
it must be hard to be a utility where you're being sued, you're being going through bankruptcy, and you're still providing a service.
Yeah, and it's not all their fault. I mean, you can't put it all at their feet. They didn't create. Did they run coal-fired power plants that contributed to it? Yes. So did everyone else, right? It. Right now it's just if you've been up in Northern California, you throw a match and it burns, right? Everything is just dry. Now we just got the first precipitation the other day, but it's been dry.
Oh,
So
well, listen, you don't know, Jared. Just went through a record summer in Tucson. July was our hottest summer, I mean, month on record. And
yeah,
then August broke it. And August is never supposed to come close to July. July's supposed to be hotter. And then August broke that record. So it's been
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. No, no, what's happening, Doug, from an environmental point of view, as a wildlife a naturalist that I've been in my past. What's happening right now is that everything is transformed into a Tucson type vegetation system. Everything that's no longer sustainable here just burns away. This will keep burning until it looks like Tucson. Because the reason Tucson doesn't look like here, aside from precipitation, is that the stuff needs to burn away. What do you think? There's a gap between the cacti. If they were all standing close together, they'll also burn in one big firestorm, right? There's a reason that these things are spread out. For the same reason that this is happening here now.
I don't know if you heard. I mean, we had a fire in our local mountain range, Catalinas. It's nothing compared to
Yeah,
like California, but it was a big deal. Like for 2 months, we all just watched it,
yeah,
and it's just like, what's burning up there? But there's brush in between the cactus, and at the higher elevations, they do have ponderosa pine, so that burned. But
yeah.
it annihilated the northern side of the mountain range, and depressing.
I love the area. I go to Aravaipa Canyon quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
North of not
Yeah.
Prescott, whatever that's called. Yeah, further east. Um,
I'm relatively new to Tucson, just 2.5 years, and came from DC, and
yeah,
it's lovely here. But it is. I would love for our monsoon season to come back. That
yeah,
that
yeah. I don't know it will because look at Big Sur. Traditionally or historically, the solar production is down a factor of 3 in the fall over the summer, which is why we just expanded a solar array at the house that we have down there that we powered. But we're not seeing that right now. You know,
mm.
from a seasonal point of view, from the latitude, it should be about 50% down. Not a factor of 2 off maximum, but not a factor of 3 off. And that was just in the past because of the clouds, right, coming in from the Pacific, hitting that landscape, and it's just not happening right now. They just don't have any rain.
Yeah, July and August, literally back, I heard back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, it's like 2, 3, 4 times a week, you'd get like almost an afternoon thunderstorm. Well, not thunder, but just a rainstorm. And we went like weeks without rain, and it was just very trivial kind of rain. So
Yeah. Doug, quick question: how long is the interview? I'm not in a rush. I just want to know
So,
approximately.
I'll probably the interview, and we're going to start in about a minute. It'll be about 22 to 24 minutes, and then we're going to close out the episode. And what we do is we take you into this thing called just chatting, where we just, if there's any additional comments, or you and I can just touch base about, maybe what's going to happen next. And so, 30, 35 minutes once at the top of the hour, max of your time. So, um,
Good.
on one sec. We'll get started. Let me just check in with someone real quick.
Mhm. I thought I turned that phone off. Okay. No idea why that phone turned on again.
Okay, we're gonna get started. All right. So like I said, I will see you on the other side. It'll be about a minute, but talk to you soon.
I'll be ready.
Hey adapters, I'm Doug Parsons. I'm a partner at Simpatico Studios,
I'll be
where
back.
we
Doug,
live
I'm going
stream
to put the phone away.
conversations about complex business and social challenges with professionals like yourself who are working on the same issues. Our shows are live streamed in front of a global audience of your professional peers on simpatico.tv. I'm building a new type of online community for professionals like yourself on the Climate Adaptation channel. If
Okay,
you're a
here we
regular
are.
listener of my America Adapts podcast, I think you'll find that we're taking our conversations about important problems, policies, and solutions to the next level here. And if you're interested in being a guest, we'd love to hear from you. And now join us for this latest episode. Hey adapters, welcome back. Today our guest is Dr. Arnold Leitner, the founder and CEO of YouSolar. Arnold is a clean tech pioneer and serial entrepreneur. Before founding YouSolar, he founded Skyfuel. With a PhD in physics, Arnold was a senior consultant and North American power market expert at Platts Consulting and was chairman of the American Solar Energy Society's Solar Electric Division. Arnold will introduce us to YouSolar, developer of the Power Block Solar Plus battery system for residential and small commercial customers. He explains how the Solar Plus battery Power Block works, how it delivers high-end power around the clock, and what makes it different from rival solar and power battery offerings. Hey Arnold, welcome to the show.
Hey, Doug, thanks for having me on.
Sure, looking forward to this chat. Well, let's just jump right into it. Why did you start YouSolar?
Well, it came out of observation that I had moved to the Bay Area, and we got our first earthquake, which I wasn't accustomed to where I'd lived previously, and so I immediately got a little iPhone solar charger. And with an iPhone and a solar charger, you have a solar battery system, if you think about it. And so I just realized, wow, that creates this entire independence. And so wouldn't, during an earthquake, I not want to also have the refrigerator running? And then I thought, well, why not just the refrigerator? Why not the whole house? And then I kind of looked into this and realized there isn't really a ready to use product out there in the market that's easy, that someone could just install in the house and have an independent power system. So that kind of started my entire thinking of how can you create such a product.
Okay, so how long you been doing this to go from just looking at your own iPhone to what you've got now? It must have taken a little bit of time.
Well, sometimes you don't start a company right after looking at the iPhone.
Right.
So it took a few months to crystallize, but I think it's been about 7-8 years now that from the first time I looked at it to where we are today.
Right, and so we'll talk a bit more about what it actually is, but you're actually selling the product now too. You've made that sort of journey, right?
Yes. And what was really important to me, which was also kind of with Skyfuel, my first company, when I look at a problem, I try to think of a technology, a revolutionary technology can really transform that market. I was not interested to just find components and try to make it work, because I felt like if you do something like that, we need to kind of rethink possibly how it's done in the first place. And so, yeah, that really led to a development path, which resulted in building our own power electronics, all of our controls, software, including and up to our own satellite-based, real-time, worldwide solar production forecast.
Wow. Okay, so how does the Solar Plus battery Power Block actually work? What's the dynamic there?
So the Power Block is a nanogrid. So it encompasses typically and simply a solar, a battery, and often a utility connection, because most people that have this kind of system have some utility connectivity most of the time or sometimes. And so what the Power Block is, unlike the solar batteries that you're familiar with, that like the Tesla or the Sun, their primary purpose is to arbitrage against energy costs from utility, to supplement the energy coming from the utility, and let you store some of the solar energy, use it some later time. The power block is different in the sense that the power block is meant to be the primary power supply to the home. It is your utility. It is a nanogrid, which is our cutesy term of taking the microgrid just a level further down and say, this house is its own power plant. It has its own full utility power supply that's replicated by the power block. So there, the power block, the utility becomes an energy source to the system. No different that the solar panel is an energy source to the system, and the power generation and the power delivery comes from this grid forming high power inverter that's part of the power block. So that is the different approach to solving this problem.
All right, so what they do in Arizona, and I bet it's similar in other states, is that they don't want you to put a solar system, and I have one up on my house that's going to really produce more energy than what you need in a given year, and it'll be different seasons and such, because it's the utility, at least in Arizona, it's not going to pay you much. You might get $20 at the end of the year, even if you produced a lot more. Is that the same situation there in California? And do you have to have a whole different solar setup with your product because you're producing more energy to charge that battery?
So there's generally the idea that most utilities will accept what's called a net zero energy production. So that over the course of an entire year, and it's often tallied at the end of the year, I think some utilities might do it on a quarterly basis, that says, here's how much solar energy produced and over the year, and here's how much energy are consumed. And if you do well, then at the end of the year, that should be zero. And utilities don't like you to overproduce, because the reality is a lot of that energy from the sun comes at a times when it's not useful for the utility, when they already have a lot of solar generation coming from solar farms. So there the utilities like to, principally, and the customers use batteries to, buffer some of that energy during the daytime and deliver it at later hours of the day. And that would help the utilities with the challenge that they have, which your listeners are familiar with, the duck curve, right? This idea coming back from the shape of a swan, or duck, I should say, that in the evening, we suddenly have this strong rise in demand because the solar systems go away. And now these batteries are meant to supply that power at that time. That is the traditional solar battery that most people think of, and that's sold to customers. What we do is different.
Okay, but so you don't the number of panels, like let's say with your system, is pretty much equal to like if you had a more traditional one too that was just going back into the grid, because
that's exactly right. Yeah, but in case of the power block, the goal of the customer is different. They're not as much concerned with saving $1 on their utility bill or going green. I mean, they do want to do that. So their goal is to be able to go through any outages that the utility system has, or where there's a utility system at all, to be able to have a full power supply that looks like high quality utility power at any time. So some of our customers actually will opt for a solar system that only produces about 75% of their annual energy needs, because they like the idea to not net meter at all, to not having to send any energy back to the grid. And given our seasonality and the temperature and the use of appliances due to temperature changes, you'll find that if you try to be 100% net zero, or net zero by definition, you'll find you have to net meter no matter how big the battery is. But if you say, let's do about 75%, then you'll find that you can consume as much as 90+% of the energy that you're producing on site using your battery.
Okay, so who are your target customers? I mean, are you targeting a certain group demographic at first?
Yeah, so the customers, a broader sense of YouSolar, are outside of the United States. It's all those people around the world that should have solar, need it the most, but really don't have any access to it because it doesn't really work on their grid systems, because the reliability of the grid is not such that it supports traditional grid-tied solar. But let's go back from those for a moment to our immediate market, because it's easier to deploy closer by. And we are here in the Bay Area, and around us, and especially north of the Bay Area in the wine country, we have enormous problems with vegetation catching fire from lightning storms, from power lines. And as a consequence, people are losing power before, during a fire event or a fire threat. And these people, have no power for 5 days. And they like to have a solution. So their approach, I mean, many of these customers have never thought about a solar system before. They want it now because they want reliability. So it's a slightly different customer group. I mean, they are environmentally conscious, but their real concern is to have power when there is no power.
Okay, and so in that example, like wildfires it's a climate change impact, and you're hearing this a lot. California's, I think, has done a really good job connecting the dots between climate
Yes.
change and the wildfires. That's great. And so actually your product, in a sense, it's an adaptation product. Most of the time when you think of solar, you think of mitigation and carbon, but what you're sort of saying is like it's going to help these areas that are impacted by climate change be sustainable as, it's going through these I guess impacts. I mean, is that part of the pitch, that it's, resilience?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But I will say something. What's happening, and that will be no surprise to you, anyone else, is that small generator sales have gone through the roof. And everyone is running over to the Home Depot or go online and try to buy a generator. And when the power goes out, the valley erupts in a humming noise, right? Because everyone in Napa turns on, well, not everyone, but those who have it turn on the generators. Now, they're the two things. First of all, they're a nuisance. Second of all, the more there are, the air quality will go to hell, especially in tighter communities. And lastly, they make the climate problem even worse. Because while you may complain about PG&E generation being a certain carbon footprint, well, the generator is probably 3 times that bad for the carbon per kilowatt hours. So that would be a resiliency by itself. What the power block and the solar battery system does, in contrast, is, well, it combines the best of both. It does give you, as a matter of fact, much higher quality power at a much lower cost per kilowatt hour than a generator, and it also allows you to solve the climate problem by not generating, of course, having generator power, but also not in the future buying power from PG&E or other, aggregators that doesn't have the high green content that obviously the power bill would deliver. So, it's the best of both worlds, really. It gives you climate resiliency and it gives you a solution towards climate change mitigation.
Okay, but has it, and I'm just curious, I want to see this, is this going to unfold on different companies across the country, but is the resilience angle making it into your promotional materials? Is that part of the selling point that you're literally doing now with customers?
That is the selling point. Yes,
Oh.
that is the selling point. You have no power, and with YouSolar, you will have power. And of course, the people love the idea that at the same time they're doing the right thing. So it's not that they're not aware. But I think it's a virtuous situation, right? That you solve a problem better. Actually, the reality is, let's touch a few, just briefly on technology. The power block has a 25 kilowatt inverter, a single phase inverter that will also soon go up to 50 kilowatts peak power. Right now it has 32 kilowatt peak. That is a full 200 ampere utility replacement. You don't find that on your average solar website, right? That's this enormous amount of power. And that power allows you to live normally during a power cut. And with the design of the power block, there is not even a flicker when utility power goes out. So that's the selling point, right, to customers. Hey, you run your own house, you can run your well pumps. And here's something, Doug, that is important. With a traditional battery system that are meant for energy arbitrage, and they're well-designed systems for what they do, they cannot drive the well pump. Most of these customers that we are talking to, and these are hundreds of thousands, ultimately don't have city water. So they rely on water pressure from the well pumps. Well pumps can draw an enormous amount of power when they first start up. So they need a large inverter, a very high power system. So they're all focused on allowing their life to continue. They have pools, let's not ignore that. They have air conditioners, not here, but further south. So yeah, it's all about being able to live a normal life while all these events unfold around them and do the right thing at the same time.
Well, I'd love to see if there's any materials where you adapt to climate change by buying this product. If you have something like that, I'd love to see it, because you're not seeing much of that yet, and that's very exciting if that's happening. I got a question in the community room here from Zach. I think this is a bit of a technical one. I think you'd be able to get it. Has there been any breakthroughs in solar technology in terms of how much light can be turned into energy once hitting a photovoltaic cell? Last info I heard on the topic, it was only 20% of the light hitting a cell can be harnessed. Are they more efficient now?
Okay, that's an excellent question. So the answer to Zach is, and to your viewers, 20% cell efficiency is plenty in terms of the available roof space that almost every home has. So you're very rarely energy constrained, meaning given a certain amount of roof space, you will generate enough energy over the course of a day and a season or a year, unless you're further north and you have strong seasonality, to power your entire home. So you like to have a more powerful or more efficient solar panel to lose less space, but you don't really need it, because the typical house, my number is usually 3 to 4 stories, has enough roof space to power all the stories below in terms of energy. Now, what solar panels miss is they don't have a lot of power. And what it means is, if you have a solar array that produces, say, has a 5 kilowatt rating, or 10 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt, that on average produces between 2.5 and 5 kilowatts on a good day during the daytime, because there's a D rate, there's some clouds, some humidity in the air. A home with that size of solar array, so that would produce all the energy during the year. But a home with that kind of energy demand has peak demands of 20 kilowatt, 25 kilowatt. So that solar array with a 2.5, 5, or 5 kilowatt power output could never run the house. And so you have to think of solar panels as that windmill, the classical windmill out in the prairie. It spins and just pumps the water while the cattle's out in feeding. There's a water tank. Most people forget there's always a water tank next to that iconic mill, and that fills up with that water. So your solar panel is that windmill, and the water tank is your battery. And from the battery, so the water tank doesn't just store the water, but also allows the water to gush into the trough when the cattle comes and wants to drink at the same time. So the batteries are the source of power, and the panels are the source of energy. Would we like to have more efficient panels in the future? Of course. We got to 20%, and it's enormously powerful to have that. Is it critical for this business? Absolutely not. We have plenty of roof space, and what's really more important is the cost of energy coming down per unit of panel.
Well, I guess I want to follow up on that. The implications, and I don't know the physics of it, but like if you get up 40, 50%, if that's even possible, that the relationship between like a residential solar with a utility, that in itself, all those homes become, if they're that efficient, aren't they becoming sort of like the energy source themselves, and the utility is just bringing that in? I mean, it seems like that's a policy decision. The utilities probably don't want that at the moment because it's not profitable for them. But what would be the implication of such a super efficient solar panel?
Well, the implication would simply, I'm not saying we don't want it, but I'd say, tell you it's not the crucial step forward right now. What it allows you is to use less space on a roof. Obviously, that helps. It allows you to produce net beyond your home, because I just told you, like a 3 or 4 story home can produce all the energy it uses for its tenants or residents. But if you had more power production, well, then you could power the house next door that is shaded by a tree, right? So yes, we would like to have more powerful, efficient solar panels. From a utility perspective, the challenge is actually slightly different. It's not that there isn't enough roof space that we can produce energy on, and it's already now, and would be even more with Zach's expectation of rising efficiencies. The challenge is when that energy comes and when it's needed. And so in that sense, the idea of the distributed battery system that sits in the neighborhoods and then stores that energy is critical. So the answer is yes, more efficient panels will make it easier to go to that future. But I think the next step right now would be to store that energy more locally in the neighborhoods, to make it more effective from a distribution point of view.
What's going on in California in regards to encouraging getting batteries itself? So like your product, there's subsidies for, traditional solar installation. I don't think there's subsidies here in Arizona for the actual battery, but does California do batteries as part of what they help?
Yes. So in California, we have this, I hope I get the acronym spelled out correctly, this SGIP, the Solar Generator Incentive Program. I think I got that correct. And that buys down the cost of the battery. And it's really focused, interesting enough, Doug, for the kind of applications that YouSolar is promoting. It looks at people in wildfire zone. It looks at people on medical devices. It looks at people who lose power. And if you are vulnerable as a customer, by virtue of a fire risk zone, or being, elderly person or a person period that needs some CPAP device or oxygen system, you can apply for a buy down or a direct subsidy on the battery. So absolutely, California, and that program was very innovative. I think it was exhausted from a financial point of view. The funding had been used up. It's being refilled and regenerated. And just before the call, we looked at the map from SGIP for California, and I believe that program is going to be reinvigorated and rolled out in a wider form than in the past. Yes, we do have that. It's very important.
Well, I hope Arizona follows in your footsteps
Yeah.
regarding that. Okay, I've got another question from Mike here. And first, it's a comment: is this technology is very encouraging, and I hope that we can distribute it widely in the near future. What, if any, obstacles are there currently to getting it to more homes, and what can we do to overcome those obstacles?
Okay, so the reality is that for most utility service territories, the cost of utility power delivered to your home is lower than the all-in cost of a solar battery system. And it's delivered energy. That's just a reality. However, we're not so far away anymore from some of the pricing that people experience now in California, uh, because the cost of mitigating and fighting and preventing those wildfires, including, PG&E just purchased 5 new helicopters, right? Well, those are not free, right? And somebody needs to fly them and fuel them and maintain them. That cost will be, and that for the viewers, that's needed to inspect the power lines before you repower them after a public service outage for safety. So that someone needs to pay for this. There's, of course, the legal problems that PG&E is in and the cost associated with it. But all set aside, in an environment where the last mile customer is more difficult to serve and needs to be, fire mitigated and needs to be done, trees need to be cut, that cost needs to be spread over rate base, apologize. And that will result in a situation where the cost of the utility power approaches or maybe exceeds in some markets already that of the power block and similar devices. So right now, for most homeowners, cost is still a consideration, especially capital cost, right? Again, financing will be important, but it's also the levelized cost of energy is still higher. However, Doug, most of these customers have the alternative of running a generator during that time period. If you run a generator for 2 weeks over a year, look at that cost. It's very high. So if you blend that with utility cost and the convenience, you may say, look, I'm ready. I'm ready for a solar battery system. So we're almost at the point. We're almost at the point that we're breaking even on a cost of energy basis. But for these customers, convenience, safety, ability to work at home is very important to them.
Okay, so we're at the end of the episode. Just, I guess the last question is sort of kind of what's next. And I know your original inspiration is, make this sort of product available in emerging markets because it's going to be, India, I think, is one of them. What's sort of the mid to long term goals? And, I guess you have to be profitable now here in the more local markets, but what's your hope in regarding to getting to those countries?
Yeah, so we have big hopes for them. And as a matter of fact, we are designing and will almost certainly install a very large system for residents in Jakarta, Indonesia. And it also proves our point. If we do have this revolutionary plug and play system, well, shouldn't be able to ship it to Indonesia and be assembled by the local electrician without any further training? And the answer is yes, it should be. And so that's why we're doing it and trying to demonstrate that. So we are, doing our first installation at the beginning of next year in Indonesia, and that market is ripe for this kind of technology. So our eyes are on that. That's where really all the happening is going to be. From Bill Gates to everyone will tell you that this is where the fight for climate is won or lost. But I will say one more thing: it's a dream market for solar battery systems, because while here in Northern California, and listen to the word northern, we have a mismatch between load high in the winter and solar less in the winter. At the equator, around which most of the emerging markets are clustered, you have flat supply and flat demand. So your solar and your usage match up perfectly. And it's a dream market for the solar battery systems. You only have to even out intraday variability. You do that with the battery, but on the seasonality, you have no problems to supply power to those people.
Well, that would be very exciting. A lot of these countries could just skip over the whole fossil fuel part of their economy. So yes, I wish you well.
That's our hope, and also skip over some of the power line transmission issues that are us right now.
Very exciting. Well, Arnold, this has been a great conversation, and I wish you luck in what you're doing there. Very important, and I guess we'll track your progress. And I want to just hold on and get you into just chatting, but thanks for coming on Simpatico.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Doug, for having me.
One moment. Okay, we're back. It's just I have to close out the episode. That's great. You know, that's I think that'll be very exciting. You know, that when first wide scale in some of these countries, I'm sure that's what gets you excited about the potential of what you're doing here.
Yes. So what we've done at YouSolar leads us and down this path, and that's the direction we want to take. And one of the things that we had to do is reinvent the entire power architecture. We haven't spoken much about this during the interview, which is good because we only have that much time. And the vision and what we try to, the people we try to serve is really important. How we do it, people don't probably care less, but it's critical because it makes it possible, right? There are lots of ideas, lots of visions, but it has to be realized. And so for emerging markets or also for the United States customer, we're breaking down the power block into modules, which individually will no be heavier than 45, 50 kilos. So that's about 100 pounds or below. So that an individual can carry them and assemble them. You don't need a lift crane. You can ship them with ground carriers. And then next thing is, as I discussed with regards to Indonesian customer, that it's plug and play. That despite the fact you're building a 50 kilowatt hour system with say 20 kilowatts of power, you can almost do it yourself. If it wasn't for the connection to the home on the breaker panel, you could do it yourself. The power block doesn't require any skills. It's pretty incredulous that an average person could put a system together with that much storage and power without any skill, but it's what we realized for them. But that was one of our goals. And that obviously, Doug, leads to the emerging markets, right? One of the big barriers anywhere is trained installers, transportation, maintenance, and we try to take that all and put it on its head and give people a product that works anywhere, can be assembled by anyone, and be moved by one person.
You know, I should have asked this, but like you think of, especially with California, the electric cars, is it a situation where you could build in how much solar capacity that you have on your house to factor in a car or two that are electric? Because I'm assuming that over a given year, they use a lot of electricity. Is it all integrated that way? Can you do that? Add a car onto a residential home and produce enough
Yeah,
energy?
well, one of our first customers will charge his Tesla from his own solar at night, stored in the battery. And yes, and we can do that because we're such a high power system. And the one thing, Doug, that we didn't get to an interview, which was very interesting hopefully for our customers, this is a little subtle, but the last mile, there's always a discussion of the last mile, right? The last mile of this, the last mile of that. And it always refers to the cell phone industry. The last mile in this industry isn't energy storage. That has been solved. It might be hard to believe for some people, but lithium-ion battery packs, residential, go for $150 per kilowatt hour, fully packaged with a wonderful battery management system. And I give you the answer, that's cheap enough. Do we want $100 per kilowatt hour? Absolutely. Do we need it? No. So that's solved. But what needs to be done now is deliver high power to these homes from the battery in the home itself. Because go to Wikipedia and type in power distribution. Down is a paragraph that will say the residential distribution network in your neighborhood is oversized by a factor of 10 with regards to the average power people are consuming in their homes. So in terms of energy delivery, these homes, even absent any solar on the roof, would only need 1/10 of the infrastructure, 1/10 the size of the transformer industry, 1/10 the wire. And if now 90% of that energy we just talked about, or 75 come locally, well, now you're down to single percentages. So if you go into markets now with infrastructure, so what we have remember it's called the power distribution system. It's not called the energy distribution system. It's called the power system because we deliver power. We deliver up to 50 kilowatt to a residential home. Now, if that is now locally produced, all I have to do is trickle energy into that house, into that battery to supplement, any local generation from the roof. That is the holy grail. So what we've done at YouSolar is to break off the utility by delivering that high power. That is really the path forward to get much wider distribution of renewable energy system, which really means solar because it's the most ubiquitous in the world.
Okay, so I had a comment, from Mike, and literally at the same instance, he was asking about electric cars and charging and all that. So
Yeah.
we were the same mindset of what was going on there. Well, okay, and So your product's just not for sale though in other states, or could people buy it if they're from another state? Is it too hard to kind of integrate into another kind of solar system that states are doing? Because I know how you know varied they are.
Yes. So no, we like to focus on the Western United States just from a logistical point of view. But no, we have interest in principle. We can, we go as far as Texas right now. But no, it can work anywhere. From a technology point of view, the systems that we can easily retrofit if you already have an existing solar array are those that are more vintage, those that have a traditional string inverter. Systems that use other panel level power electronics, such as Solar Edge or Enphase, we currently cannot retrofit. But again, we still haven't reached remotely the potential for solar. And we just opened up an entire new customer base, right? The climate resilient customer. So right now, we do get a lot of inquiries, people asking, can we retrofit our existing solar? And, we can most of the time. And with regards to the question of different states, no, it doesn't really matter. I mean, most people do or do not have a net metering agreement, and sometimes it's not that valuable to them. So, they just say, I'll get out of it and I want to have my own power supply. So yeah, it's not really a barrier, neither geography nor the regulatory environment that these customers are in.
So a variation of the question that one of the listeners, Lisa, is asking, and maybe you touched upon this, and I'm sorry I missed it, but the notion of you want to be independent, especially wildfires knock you off the grid. But let's say even localized, that there's a part of a community and they had their own microgrid in the case of these disasters, and now all these homes become the energy sources that are keeping a region afloat with energy. And I guess you need a critical mass of homes that are actually doing it. But is that part of the strategy too? Is that you could create resilient pockets within the broader electrical grid?
Yes, absolutely. And so if you have an existing community, it is interconnected by the utility. So that would be an AC system. And you can't just go to utility and say like, well, we're going to use your AC lines to run power between those homes. So that, puts a damper on the vision. If you own some houses in the proximity, we have a case with a customer who has a second home with this adjacent property. Well, we can connect those two homes and create the first microgrid. However, Doug, there's a lot of new construction still occurring, not just outside, but also in the United States. And so we have demonstrated, with my team that I work with a power electronics expert, that you can interconnect multiple homes with a direct current microgrid. And that has a lot of advantages from a design perspective. And so the answer is emphatically yes. Are there business models out there right now where new developments, say with 100 homes, has their own nanogrid on site, right? They have the power block installed, and can they be networked and exchange energy, on a microgrid? Absolutely yes. And it should be done with direct current because it's so much easier to do.
All right, Arnold, I'm going to let you go. This was an awesome conversation. Always learning more and more about what's going on with solar, and it's very exciting what you're up to. But so this episode should be available to you hopefully in the next 24 hours. And please do share. You see some value in that way. And if there's future topics that you want to talk about, we want you to look at Simpatico as this platform to talk about these things. So
thank you so much, Doug. It's my first encounter with Simpatico, but I like the experience and would love to be back.
Awesome. I like to hear that. So yeah, you can sign out of Zoom, but you have a great day.
Okay. Thank you so much, Doug. Bye.
Bye. All right, folks. I have to sign off for just a little bit. I've got another episode coming up just at the top of the hour with Sarah Moore, and we are going to be talking. Let me just read the whole title properly. It's Impacts of Melting Permafrost on Indigenous Communities in the Tundra. I'm very excited about this conversation. It's going to be really cool. So we'll be back on in about 15, 20 minutes. So I hope you stick around or come back around and hear what Sarah has to say.